Hey, welcome back. So if it wasn't for Rose Fire being so awesome and perfect for Rose Holman students, this would be the OAuth method that I love the most. So what we're doing is we're adding Google Auth. So the idea is this little white square down here is going to actually become a button, right? So it's going to say like sign in with Google and you're going to click it. And the thing that I love about this is it lets people use an existing username and password. They don't have to create something new for your app. And just as a reminder, this is not unique to Google, right? So there's a lot of OAuth 2 providers. Right now, there are 4 that Facebook supports. So one is Google, obviously, Facebook, Twitter, and GitHub. Now, GitHub might surprise you. It's like, who has a GitHub account? But a lot of software developers do, and it's kind of fun for testing, and it's actually one of the easiest to use, which is neat. In the lab, you're going to have to implement one of these other 3, Facebook, Twitter, or GitHub. But together, we're going to do what I kind of consider the most important one, and that's Google Auth. And it's really, really fun. So there's a lot of steps that happen in these things. And this link right here, I'll make sure to put it above, walks you through the process. I could easily make my own slides that walk you through the process, but things change so often that I'm going to actually kind of walk along their instructions as we do it together. And the reason I'm doing that is because if something changes, their instructions will let you know, whereas this video might not change immediately, right? So we're going to kind of follow along with their instructions. So it's kind of got this before you begin, and then it's got steps. So it's got like step number 1, step number 2, and then it's kind of got, it's long, right? It's got step number 3, authenticating with Firebase, and then you're kind of done. So that's the plan for today. So we're going to stick it all into one video just because it'll kind of be better as a chunk. The first thing is a pod. Of course there's a pod, right? Why wouldn't there be a pod? So we come over to our pod file. It's crazy how many pods we ended up adding in this unit. And we add on one more for Google sign-in. And we do what we do. We come over here. The last command I ran was pod install. So I just hit up arrow and pod install, and now I've got some more things. So I've got Google sign-in. Google sign-in is a little bit different. It's written entirely in Objective-C. Since it's written entirely in Objective-C and they don't plan to move it, you need a bridging header. This should be no surprise to you. This app is all Swift. We don't have a bridging header yet. There's a lot of ways to make a bridging header, but the one that I think is the best, and I think it's funny that it works this way, is just to make a new file and just to make an Objective-C M file, right? So the M here says what type of file. And so I'm in iOS source Objective-C M file. And whenever I make one, I don't care what you call it, I'm going to call mine trigger to make a bridging header. You can just type blah. We're going to delete it. The only thing I'm doing this for is so that it will trigger a bridging header. And I said empty file there because I just didn't care. Put it into the default location, sounds great. This is what I cared about. Would you like to configure the bridging header? Why, yes, I would. In fact, that's the only reason I'm doing this. Once you've got your bridging header, so you can see it's password keeper bridging header, you can actually delete this other file. It was just here to help create this bridging header for you. Great. Back over to the instructions. So import the required header files. So in your app's bridging header, add the following line. So I'm just going to copy this line right here, and I'm going to stick it right there. Great. Back over to my instructions. By the way, we kind of glossed over this. It said to import Firebase in places. We've already done that, right? So awesome. There were 3 steps, and the first one is done. Unfortunately, it was the easiest step. Next up, it's kind of split into 2 parts. There's the implementing of Google Sign-In, which is kind of the longest part, so it looks like it's got 9 seconds. And then there's using that sign-in with Firebase. So the first stuff we're going to do here has kind of nothing to do with Firebase. It's just all about just like Google Sign-In. And you can see in their instructions that it says, hey, there's some detailed information over on this website. But to be honest, they tell you everything you need to know right here, right? So you don't need to go anywhere. The first step is probably the most confusing. There's some low-level URL scheme stuff you have to do. I think my slide showed even better than theirs. No offense to their stuff. But you have to go into your Google Services plist, and you have to copy out your reversed client ID. I just follow steps, right? So I find this reverse client ID, which is right here. I kind of double click on it to where it's highlighted, and I say copy. Great. Got that on my clipboard. Where do you want me to put it? You want me to put it somewhere? You want me to put it into, so click on the top thing, and then this target, and then info, and then expand URL types, add a URL type, and paste it over onto the URL scheme. I can do that. Top one, click on the target, click on info, expand. I'm going to minimize this top area just because it's too big. Expand URL types, create a new one, and at URL schemes, paste it right there. Done. Is that all you got for me? Do I know what that step really does? No, not really. It is necessary. It says to do in the instructions, and I did it. No big deal. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to do some stuff in the app delegate. Now, before, we've kind of done everything in the login view controller, but with Google sign-in, you've got to do some stuff in the app delegate. No big deal. So what you want to do is you want to add this GID, so the Google ID sign-in delegate. So we come over into here and we add on GID sign-in delegate. It says, what the heck are you talking about, Lewis? And the reason for the error is because we claim that we implement a protocol, but we don't actually confirm to the protocol. I can't believe that there's still not a thing in like Xcode. It seems like there should just be like a, generate code so that I implement this protocol, but there's not. Fortunately, we're following instructions, right? So it's easy enough to go look at the instructions. So there's a couple things that we need to do to implement that protocol. I'm not sure why, but they do some other things first. And what they do first is in the did finish launching, they add these two lines. So that's easy. So right after configure, we're going to add those two lines. Still is not happy about this protocol thing. So we come back over here. They do something else. Again, I'm in the Swift area. They have this new method, right? So I'm just going to pop it right here at the top. So this is application open URL. Do I know what this does? Not really. Did it implement that protocol? No, it did not. You know what? I bet I can option click and go see what it is. Yeah. So this protocol is required sign in, did sign in for user. There's also this did disconnect if you want to do something in disconnect. So this one is going to be required, and this one is optional. Notice how it's Objective-C and not Swift. I'm sure the instructions will get to it. So we did this thing, which didn't satisfy that. We did this thing for opening URLs, and then here is if we're iOS 8 or older, so we skip over this because this doesn't apply to us. Here, finally, it's implementing the protocol. So I'm going to copy those two things to my clipboard. And you know what? I should probably put them at the bottom. What the heck? I'll put them at the bottom. Make sure you put it inside your app delegate, though. Notice that this extension is outside. So there's sign in, and then there's so did sign in and did disconnect. This one is technically optional. So you know what? I'm going to delete it until a time where I need it. It turns out I won't need it, so I'm just going to delete it. Where it says ... here, I'm going to say use this Google user object to sign in with Firebase, right? So we're gonna come back to this spot, right? So this is going to be the spot where somebody just signed in, right? And so whenever we get to step 3, when we're doing stuff with Firebase, this will be the spot. Cool. So really, the app delegate had a lot of sign-in, like low-level stuff, but really it's all going to come down to this spot. So let's go back to our instructions, and it says that that now you're done with the app delegate for now, right? There's also some stuff you need to go do in your view controller, because like we haven't got a button yet, right? And so there's stuff we've got to go do in the view controller. He needs to implement a protocol as well. It's the UI delegate. So let's go ahead and go over to the login view controller, and let's say, hey, you implement a protocol, Google ID sign in UI delegate. That the UI is the only thing that makes it different than what the app delegate had, right? So the app delegate had the same thing, but without a UI. This one has the UI. If you want to go see what's in it, you can go see what's in it with this trick. Turns out that everything in it is optional, which is kind of nice. So that's why it's not yelling at us, right? Because everything in this protocol is optional, which is great. And the only thing we have to do, which is pretty sweet, is we have to do this shared instant UI delegate as self, which is great. And there's some other stuff here, like about styling the button. What the heck? I'll copy this over, and I will paste it into view did load. So I'll just put it right there. Turns out this middle comment I'm not going to ever use, but I will configure the button. So I'm going to do some stuff with that here in a minute, which will be fun. Back over to the instructions. Back in the instruction it says if you're using a storyboard, set its custom class to GID sign in button. Okay, I can do that. So I need to go into my storyboard, and I need to go find that guy. Zoom into 100% here so I can actually get on it. So he needs to have a custom class, which is right here. And I'm going to try typing it. Yeah, so I type GID sign in button. Cool. So that didn't feel like much, but that is actually a huge step. So now this used to be a UI view. Now it's no longer a UI view. It's now a GID sign in button. And if you run it, you'll see a difference, like right away. So here it popped up, and it says Google sign in, right? So it's pretty sweet that like you change it from a UI view to a GID sign in button. You do these other steps and it says sign in. Sign in is reasonable, but personally I don't like sign in quite as well. I want to actually style it a little bit. In order to style it, what you have to do is back over in your code. Get back over here to the view controller. You can see that we have this like Google login button, which was a view. Well, we don't want it to be a view. We want it to be this thing, right? So a Google ID sign in button. I can actually delete this thing where it was a view because it's not a view anymore. Now that I've got a reference to it, I already connected it in the storyboard for you, by the way. I can actually make changes to it. And so the only styling we want to do is dot style equals, and it's dot wide, right? This is my personal preference. So instead of just saying sign in, I like the wide style better. And here it says sign in with Google. Oh yeah, that's cool. It actually does stuff now. So if you click on it, it's gonna take you to like a sign in. I've done this once before, so it remembered me, and it actually came to the sign in stuff, which is pretty neat. I'm now signed in, which is cool. It's probably going to mess up my app a little bit because I'm signed in. I just didn't do anything with it with Firebase yet. Does that make sense? So let's finish our instructions. So sweet, we finished step 2, right? So step 2 was implement Google sign in. We did it, right? So it actually ran. I should have put a log in there. It ran the whole darn thing, and it got to this line right here, and there were no errors. So if I had the foresight, I would have put a console login that says you are now signed in as far as Google is concerned, right? In order to be signed in with Firebase, there's going to be another step. Cool, so let's do something with this now. By the way, I might be in a really weird state because I'm signed in as far as Google's concerned, but not signed in as far as Firebase is concerned. Let's scroll down to step 3 and see what Firebase wants us to do. So back over in did sign in for user. So here we're in the did sign in for user. It's got some things here that need to be updated. It says like show message prompt. Don't care about any of that. But it says you're going to need your credential, which, you know, you can figure out what it is or just know that you need it. So it says create a credential. In order to make the code more readable, it breaks off this user.authentication into a variable, which is fine. The only problem with it is it's hard to see on my screen because it's so long. So they break this off into a variable, but really you can see they're just grabbing from it an ID token and an access token, and it makes a credential. Why do they want a credential, you ask? Well, much like, you know, how like anonymous auth worked or, you know, sign in custom worked, there's another sign in method called sign in with credential, which is great. And the credential is, sure enough, that thing there. And the completion handler, I wish that we could use our login completion handler. And there's probably some good way to do it, but it's over in our other view controller. I'm sure I could figure out how to do it, but you know what? It's easy enough to do that I'm just going to type it again, right? I'll type kind of like a shortened version of it. But essentially, you know, if the error was not nil, then, you know, you just print a message, right? So error, I'll just say error with Google Auth. And then also another thing you can do is errors have this .localized description thing you could do. And of course return, right? So if there was an error, just abandon ship. If there were no errors, then handle login, which is great. So I can run it now, but I'm gonna do one more thing before I run it. It should all work now, which is cool. So I'm actually using the Google Auth to sign in. The other thing I want to do is on log out. There's actually something I want to do. And I'll give myself a little bit more space before I do it and find my spot again. GID sign in .shared instance .sign out. This is the line that's going to actually sign me out as far as Google's concerned, right? And then this is the line that will sign me out as far as Firebase is concerned. Slight subtle difference. All right, so I'm going to run it now. I am in kind of a weird state because I'm already signed in with Google. Just Firebase doesn't know it. So we'll just kind of see what happens. So I'm going to click on sign in. Yeah, it just shot me right through, right? So I'm going to sign out to do the experience properly. So sign out. So sign in with Google. This is what a user would get. It remembered that this user had signed in previously, but if you wanted to, you could say sign in with a different account. And it prompts you for your password. I love their UI look. So I put in my username here, and then I click sign in. It has a screen that asks you for permissions. This is a pretty common screen. RoseFire thought about doing a screen like this, except for there was really no point. And then sure enough, it signs you in. So I'm now signed in via Google. And so now I can do my Project Fi thing again. And I'll just put in the rest is blah, blah. So Project Fi via Google Auth. And so I add that and it works. Cool. Let's go check it out over on the Firebase. So you find the console here. You see what users you've got. And sure enough, right there, I now have a fisherds@gmail with the provider with the Google logo, which is cool. It's kind of neat. So here's my RoseFire one. Those three are my anonymous ones. Those ones are my email password ones. If I go over to the database, what was his UID? So GZW. So I come over and I find good old GZW, and he has some passwords, and sure enough, his project is Project Fi via Google Auth. This stuff is so cool. Like it's almost too subtle, but I mean, I've got somebody that signed in with Google right there. Got somebody signed in with RoseFire right there. I think these two were both email passwords. I think I deleted all the anonymous ones. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure I could figure it out. So it's JSU and a ZE. So that looks like it was coming from a JSU. Yep, that's an ABC guy. And an EZ4. Yep, that's the president. Cool. So you have just finished this app. You have all the different sign-in methods we want. Very powerful stuff. I hope you enjoyed this follow along. If you're taking the class for credit, of course you have to submit it. And we will see you next time where we talk about the lab. Great job.